The triumph of light over darkness is not an event to be celebrated, for the balance of light and darkness is crucial, enough light to make the abyss visible, and enough darkness to destroy the great wall that covers it. In Nietzsche's meditation on light and darkness, there is a warning that excessive devotion to the ecclesiastical enlightenment will drive away the erudition granted by darkness, leading to the inability to recognize the dark truths of the universe. Friedrich Nietzsche's ideas are ballistic, and he fired many bullets of explosive criticism. He targeted exploitative structures that only give birth to delusions that prevent individual liberation. Therefore, his aim is focused on traditions that are opposed to reality. Nietzsche is considered one of the greatest thinkers in history, but he did not emerge from the head of Zeus and has no precursor. Instead, the philosopher of pessimism, Schopenhauer, triggered him on his intellectual path, and Kant was the root of Schopenhauer's dark philosophy. His view that life is meaningless developed from Kant's idea of things in themselves, or the internal truth of things that we cannot understand because it is outside of our experience. Hence, there is an internal truth on why plants reach for the sun and why people strive to achieve their goals. For Schopenhauer, this is because of our will, or the force that drives things to continue, as the essence of internal truth. However, our will is insatiable. It is an endless desire that is never satisfied. It only continues to strive to achieve something. And when it no longer wants to achieve anything, it only leads to meaningless boredom and suffering. Therefore, for Schopenhauer, life is irrational or meaningless. Nietzsche criticized Schopenhauer's nihilistic rejection of life, despite recognizing some of his ideas. Thus, Nietzsche emphasized life affirmation and rejected the prevailing nihilistic Western values. Therefore, Nietzsche's writings aim criticism at things that support harmful values, narrowing human thought. Nietzsche asked, how can the greatness of culture be measured, and what are the conditions that lead to this greatness? If one would notice, Western discussions on art and science often trace back to ancient Greece. As a pioneer in Western philosophy, the ancient Greeks became the central focus of world culture analysis. For most people, the Greeks' emphasis on rationality and wisdom may have contributed to their culture's greatness. However, for Nietzsche, it was because of the antagonistic conflict between the Apollonian spirit and the Dionysian spirit. Ancient Greeks saw the Apollonian spirit as the ultimate ideal, representing reason, balance, and enlightenment. But for Nietzsche, the Dionysian spirit led by the cult of Dionysius, the god of intoxication and destruction, is equally important. Nietzsche taught that Greek culture was great because of the balance between the Apollonian and Dionysian spirits. The Apollonian glorifies enlightenment, while the Dionysian deifies destruction, both of which can heal human suffering. The Apollonian spirit beautifies reality, while the Dionysian spirit confronts it with chaos. Thus, the Apollonian spirit brings wisdom, the Dionysian spirit offers insight into the human condition. Ancient Greek tragedians balanced dialogue and music in their works, creating a harmonious blend of Apollonian and Dionysian elements. Nietzsche believed that Socrates and the ancient Greek philosophers destroyed balance by accepting only the Apollonian. In Socratic dramas, dialogue was emphasized over music. Because philosophers glorified only the Apollonian spirit, the healthy culture of ancient Greece declined and weakened. Hence, ancient Greek philosophers prioritized reason, leading to the downfall of a once healthy and creative culture.
But to understand the ways of the heart is to grasp as clearly the malice or ineptitude of the gods, who, in their vain and clumsy labors to create a flawless surrogate, have left mankind but dazed and incomplete.
Nietzsche, as an anti-philosopher, offers insightful analysis with implications that transcend his own philosophy. He acknowledges the negative consequences of overvaluing wisdom while rejecting primal human qualities such as poetry and visual arts. Thus, he attributes the destruction of balance to philosophers, which leads humanity towards chaos and imprisonment in the metaphysical realm of ideas. Therefore, Nietzsche views the purpose of philosophy as correcting these delusions by embodying values that liberate individuals. So why should light extinguish darkness when they give life to each other? Beyond excessive rationality's cultural effects, the struggle against oppression is tied to the ancient conflict of light and darkness. Our condemnation of darkness blinds us to the destructive aspects it shares with our perception of light. Hence, embracing values that condemn oppression while hiding our desire for justice fails us all. In On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche compared the morality of aristocrats and slaves in ancient civilizations. Here, he wants to examine the differences between people who have power and those who do not. From the aristocratic perspective, they prioritize their power, whether economic or political, above all. Their idea or model of goodness reflects their way of life, powerful and honorable. What they view as unfavorable reflects qualities that oppose their own, weakness and vulnerability, associated with slaves. Slave morality values weakness as a positive trait, aligning with their way of life. According to Nietzsche, the concept of evil was invented by the slaves to describe the opposite of goodness. They labeled the aristocrats they despised and feared as evil. Hence, Nietzsche believed that evil in human history is a product of social circumstances, not a creation of God. The slaves created God as their beloved judge who would reward them in the afterlife. Above all, their God would also judge the aristocrats, condemning them to an eternal, blazing sea of fire and hell. This gives meaning to the suffering of the slaves. As Nietzsche said, man, the bravest animal and most prone to suffer, does not deny suffering as such. He wills it. He even seeks it out, provided he is shown a meaning for it, a purpose of suffering. The meaninglessness of suffering, not the suffering, was the curse that has so far blanketed mankind. Hence, the slaves, unable to change and liberate their earthly lives, formed the idea that they would be rewarded in God's kingdom. In this way, the slaves endure their suffering, finding a reason to continue even though they reject their life on earth. Nietzsche argues that slaves turn weakness into a reward rather than overcoming it. In short, according to Nietzsche, if a person succumbs to cowardice, they are thinking like a slave. Because if you are not a coward and you fight against oppression until death, you will not die as a slave. But those who blindly embrace their oppression will die as slaves. Hence, slaves seek revenge in their minds and resort to illusions instead of confronting their oppressors. In fact, in our everyday experience, we witness slave morality. For example, when someone is ridiculed, instead of fighting back and defending themselves, they may choose not to respond because they do not want to lower themselves to that level. Here, we see how slaves translate fear and cowardice as a reward. The root cause of slaves not fighting back, even when they have freedom to choose, is their deliberate choice of inaction. Slaves have made not fighting a virtue, allowing their meaningless suffering to continue. As a result, slaves harbor resentment and regret, which prevents them from taking action to free themselves. Nietzsche attributes the formation of slave morality in Western civilization to the Jews and various forms of Christianity. He believed that both Judaism and Christianity only endorse slave morality despite being considered separate religions. The morality of the slave can be analyzed in the New Testament, in the Sermon on the Mount, which can be found in Matthew 5:3-10. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Although Nietzsche said the following about morality of the slave and the aristocrat, for him, the morality of the slave prevailed. For example, the Roman Empire's conversion to Christianity led to the aristocracy's acceptance of slave morality. Now, what does Nietzsche suggest as a response to these issues? According to Nietzsche, things like greed, torture, or killing are not intrinsically wrong. This is because nature, as the unique reality, is the only one that is greedy, torturous, and deadly. If we look at human relations, we cannot expect them not to pose a danger to each other. However, this does not mean that Nietzsche advocates for cruelty. In fact, Nietzsche sees morality as valuable when it enhances a culture's aesthetic greatness. Therefore, Nietzsche values the impact of morality on the human condition, unlike moral frameworks emphasizing consequences. For him, it is natural for humans to desire to surpass their abilities, for the simple reason that this is the established flow of nature. In relation to this, Nietzsche does not believe that one morality is suitable for everyone. Therefore, people should live according to their own moral system to attain the pinnacle of their abilities. This is what Nietzsche means when he says that people seek their own meaning in their suffering. The ethics of a warrior differ from those of an artist, teacher, engineer, scientist, and others. Similarly, the ethics of ordinary people who need a belief to continue instead of committing suicide are also different. Nietzsche believed that social organization is necessary to produce cultural greatness. Nietzsche rejects anarchism as it hinders cultural greatness, which necessitates a disciplined and rhythmic routine. In the quote, "Well, there actually are things to be said in favor of the exception, provided that it never wants to become the rule." Nietzsche acknowledges his role as an intellectual, living in isolation to fulfill his role and responsibility. However, he does not suggest that this is the life that everyone should follow. Instead, he suggests that there is no moral system suitable for everyone, and because we have unique lives, there are corresponding ways of living. Therefore, you cannot force other people to be like you if it is not the appropriate way of living for them. To understand Nietzsche, we also need to understand his famous line, "God is dead and we have killed him." This statement implies the secularization of modern Western civilization, separating the church from people's everyday lives. People today no longer rely on priests for job or business advice based on religious teachings, despite still identifying with religion. And even though most people attend Mass every week, they separate their daily activities or decisions from their faith. Humans created God, but they also destroy their invention by losing their intense belief. However, Nietzsche does not see the death of God as a good thing. It implies that humans require alternative moral values to replace dominant Judeo-Christian values. According to Nietzsche, there are two things that can replace these values. One of these is his own myth of eternal recurrence. This concept is based on the thermodynamics of his own time, but it is not pseudoscientific because it is a myth. Matter can be considered atomic because it is composed of tiny atoms, making it finite or having an end. However, time is endless. If this is true, over time, every possible combination of a limited number of atoms should occur. And if time is infinite, every conceivable arrangement of atoms must repeat endlessly, forever. Thus, our lives will unfold repeatedly in an unending and immeasurable journey of eternity. Nietzsche sees eternal recurrence as a grim, not joyful truth of human immortality, because the endless repetition of life suggests that our universe is incapable of progressing or changing. However, the lack of meaning and direction in life does not mean that it is meaningless. Nietzsche sees meaning in the Übermensch, who established their own morality in a post-Judeo-Christian world. Nietzsche's radical critique targets truth as a conventional and social metaphor upheld by people to shape their worldview. This criticism extends to Judeo-Christian values, which elevated truth to a moral virtue. Consequently, truth becomes a constraining construct that hampers academic freedom. Nietzsche's ideas on truth's limitations have had a broad influence, despite his untimely death. Philosophers like Deleuze, Foucault, and Heidegger drew inspiration from him, but fascist elements also used his philosophy. Mussolini and the Nazis used Nietzsche's Übermensch concept to justify their beliefs. However, Nietzsche cannot be entirely blamed for these phenomena. His daring questioning and criticism of norms align with philosophy's purpose of seeking a proper way of living. Philosophy doesn't provide absolute truths, but it allows us to examine overlooked matters. Misinterpretations of Nietzsche reflect a lack of understanding in philosophy, not his responsibility.